Welcome to Independently Speaking, the podcast from the Independent Schools Association. ISA supports head teachers and staff across a wide variety of independent schools. Join us for a new episode as we explore the world of independent education, sharing insights from school leaders and discussing the challenges and opportunities shaping our sector. Here is your host, Director of Education and Inclusion, Helen Stanton-Tonner.
Welcome to the ISA podcast, Independently Speaking. I am your host, Helen Stanton-Tonner, the Director of Education and Inclusion for ISA. Today, we're taking a very special walk through More Than Ed, an independent SEMH school in Doncaster, which is rooted in relational practice, trauma-informed approaches, and an unwavering belief in nurturing confidence, self-worth, and emotional safety. We'll be exploring how the school supports children who have experienced significant adversity, how relationships underpin every part of the school day, and how their curriculum, both academic and therapeutic, creates the conditions for students to rebuild trust and re-engage in learning. We'll also be getting a first-hand feel for the atmosphere here, the calm, the connection, the intention behind every single space, and the strength of the community that holds these young people. To guide us around the school and share insight into the ethos, curriculum, and daily life of More Than Ed, I am delighted to be joined by Charlie, who is the Managing Director, and Hayley, who is the Deputy Head. Thank you both so much for welcoming us.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To meet you.
Now, More Than Ed is a relatively young school with quite a clear mission of what it wants to achieve. Can you start by giving us a brief overview of how the school came to be and what inspired its creation?
Yes, so my mother, Karen Holmes, is the head and the proprietor. So growing up, my mum, she was a teacher in a mainstream setting. As time went on, obviously mainstream settings changed, and she saw a lot of problems in that area, and she saw that obviously a lot of children were being failed by mainstream settings. Kids with obviously things like trauma, they needed something completely different. So she opened a school, which, to be fair, when she first told me, I thought she'd lost the plot, because I thought, who opens a school? I worked in finance at the time, and I was thinking, okay, Mum, yeah, go for it. I never actually thought she managed to do it. So we are all very proud of her for that. We opened a actual provision, an alternative provision to begin with, which we had children like 3 days a week, and they were meant to go to mainstream education. The other two, whether they went was a different story. But as we went along, we realised we can then make this into the school, and that's what we did 5 years ago. And I think the thing is we needed something that was different for children, because not every child fits into mainstream settings. And the name itself is deliberate. More Than Ed stands for more than education, and our children need more than just education.
And what would you say really makes More Than Ed sort of unique today, especially within the world of specialist sort of SEMH provision?
Really, it's our size and the model. We're a very small school. Again, that is deliberate. It's completely intentional. Every staff member knows every child. Of course, obviously, ones have stronger relationships than with others than they do with each other, but everyone still knows each other. Children work on a one-to-one basis with staff. Again, that is deliberate. We have therapeutic support. We have a speech and language therapist. We have a drama therapist. We even have therapy dogs.
Yes.
That come in, which is lovely. The thing is what we realise is executive function, which we'll go into in a bit. When that is compromised at an early age, communication itself for children becomes a barrier. So we need to get past that, and we only do that by relationships and trust.
And obviously for a lot of people have never visited this school, and particularly for our listeners who maybe haven't stepped foot in specialist settings, how would you describe the atmosphere here that develops that relational warmth?
Well, it's calm. I think people, when they think of schools that are trauma schools, SEMH schools, they are expecting chaos, and that's not the case. We have a very calm atmosphere, again, on purpose. The rooms, which obviously people can't see, but they are, how would you describe the rooms, as in like the colours?
Yes, colours are calming colours. Everything's chosen to actually relax the children. The sort of lack of, we've not got all the posters in the walls and the prompts and everything that you need or that you would see in a mainstream school. I think coming from a mainstream background myself, how I would describe this is, if, like Charlie says, with specialist settings, it's kind of boxed off and closed in. In a mainstream school, you do sort of get some allowance to make the provision of like a nurture group, and I think I see this as just a large nurture group, and that you've got that relaxed atmosphere, and that you can sort of work with student at their level.
Yeah, and I think as well, which you'll see when we walk around, our children can walk through the building freely. The staff know them, each kid knows each other, and because we're small, it happens naturally. It's not forced, which is lovely. We all say hello to each other. That is the way it is, and it's a nice environment. We don't block off exits for children. If a child needs to go outside, they go outside. And again, that builds relationships and trust.
And you're talking very much about an embedded approach here, aren't you? And with that sort of ethos, how does it shape each student's experience from the moment they arrive?
Well, basically, our ethos is really meeting children where they are. We have no expectation of what a child should be like at that age. We work on stage, not age here. We're not asking them to fit into our system. We're building a system around them. And every child is different. What we have, I don't know if you know this, but we do pick up and drop off our children. So our staff pick up and drop off in their cars with that child every day. So it's the same staff member. And the reason we do that is because the transition from going from home life to school is quite difficult, and our children would struggle tremendously if they had to get on a bus. We don't like using taxis because, again, they're not getting that moment with staff to just, sometimes they want to talk your ear off, sometimes they want to not talk, and that's fine. But it's the transition from moving from one to the other. And I do think that makes it easier for the children.
And you're talking a little bit there about the beginning of their day, aren't you? That sort of very beginning experience. And for many of your students, school's really been a place of anxiety and disconnection before, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So what does a typical day look like for a student here, and how do you structure the rest of the day to ensure that they sort of feel grounded and are ready to learn?
Well, I think Hayley will agree with me, there's no typical day. No typical day. And that's actually the point, because if it was a typical day, you'd be doing the same thing every day. But we have no idea what's going on at home in the morning for these children. Some of these children have experienced more in a couple of days than I've in my entire life. So how can we say, right, we're doing maths now, we're doing English now, we're doing science now? You can't do that. Of course, we start with consistency, so the same person picks them up and drops them off, and that is sort of like the bookends of the day, so they know where they are with that. But throughout the day, if a child needs some time, they have some time. And the thing is what we've learned from this is that a child then, because they trust us and because they know that if they need that, they get that, they don't just do it because they can. And that is quite an important thing, that kids don't just go, oh, I can't be bothered. There's a reason. Behaviour is communication, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, a lot, because that is one of our key things. And obviously, we go off how they feel on that day. And amazing, of course it's amazing. It'd be lovely if every day you came in, everyone just did the work and everything was okay, but that's not real life.
They have got the timetables. They have individual timetables which incorporate sensory breaks. They come in, they have the breakfast. It's as long as short as they need, basically. So, it's quite relaxed stuff. These are expectations, but if we don't get that done, we'll flip it about. it's fine.
Yeah.
And obviously we've touched quite a lot already on that relational practice, those relationships and knowings of the students. So how do the staff build that trust with the students sort of on a sort of day-to-day basis across the different spaces of the school? Because that's quite a challenge, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, trust isn't something you can just expect. For many of these children, adults are actually the source of the trauma. So what we're actually asking them to do is to trust something that they fundamentally are terrified of, and that's a massive risk. And this is why we have kids working with certain staff. We have about 4-ish staff, don't we, that work with them. That's a deliberate choice. We're very conscious that a lot of our students do have attachment difficulties, disorganised attachment from early trauma. And what they do is they simultaneously crave connection. And obviously, if they have that with one person, what do we do if that staff member's off? We need them to build relationships with multiple adults to know that not all adults are bad.
All staff know what's going on in that child's life.
Yeah.
They were all aware, we discuss it in meetings. We've got our systems where we have access to everything that has happened, so obviously they're not going to speak out of turn, upset them further. And I think also with the students, a lot of our children are from looked after. So if their adult trust us, the person that they're in care with now, they're fighting for them. If they trust us, because we can build that relationship with the pickups and the drop-off, it actually allows the student then sees, oh, actually, this person's safe, these are okay, and it helps us. So.
And I think as well, what makes it work is because we're small, and that isn't something we ever want to get massive. We never want to do that. That isn't us. You can walk past a child in a corridor, which we will do, and you know what's happened yesterday. You know what the triggers are. So even though they have those regular staff who work with them one-to-one, they surround them by adults who genuinely know their life, and that is a big deal to children. Just greeting them in the morning, everyone greets everybody, and you know we're trying to build trust through predictability, and our staff are very predictable. They all have their own personalities, of course they do, but we all have the same morals. We want to break trauma. Is it possible? I don't know, but we'd like to try.
Now, tell your mum, Karen Holmes, has spoken before about defining behaviour as communication. How does that principle guide the pastoral work here, sort of the interventions you use and your expectations of the staff that you work with?
Well, when we say that behaviour is communication, which I said earlier, we literally mean that's what it is. So if a child is, they're not being difficult on purpose, they're trying to tell us something, usually they don't have the words or the safety or the regulatory capacity to actually tell us any other way. So our job is to find out what they're trying to communicate. That's our job. That's where things like a speech and language therapist becomes crucial. Many of our children simply don't have the language or executive functioning skills to communicate in that way. So the communication just comes through behaviour. It's the only tool that they have. I would say that the speech and language work that we do, it isn't done overnight. It takes time, and we have to become fluent in reading their behaviour. And again, that is why we all know every child, because we can sense something's going to happen, and you try and stop it before it does. What we've learned is that a child who needs to get out of the school, do whatever, we let them, because most children don't, not most, every child doesn't want to be blocked in classrooms. This is why we don't sit in front of doors, we don't do anything like that. If a child says need to go for a walk, I need to go, they can go. That's why we have things like 5-point scales for children, so we can try and get there before the behaviour becomes more excessive, and that's sort of the point. We don't want them to ever feel trapped. We need them to know that they can get out, and that's the main thing.
And that's a lesson that any educator could take in any setting, isn't it? Getting to know their students so well that they can read before the behaviour comes. Yes. And that's an amazing skill to have.
Yeah.
Could you talk us through a little bit how you support your students' sort of emotional development and regulation skills? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, particularly those who come maybe with those high levels of anxiety and trauma and underdeveloped executive functioning. How do you begin that?
So many of our students, they arrive with nervous systems that are essentially stuck in survival mode, because that's all they've ever known is to survive. They don't have a traditional background. Their executive functioning is so compromised just for basic tasks, finding words, managing emotions, everything becomes overwhelming for them. And so, traditional behaviour management approaches just fall, they actively harm them, you can't do them. That's why we have a speech and language therapist working directly with students. When executive skills are low, communication itself breaks down. Children can't tell us what they need, what they're feeling, what's wrong, and they can't because they don't understand it themselves. So when people say to me, and people do, say, well, just tell them. Well, they don't understand. They don't know why they feel as they do. They're not just trying to say it, they genuinely don't know. In a one-to-one setting that we have, we're able to see each child in that moment with regular staff. We can spot early signs like we've just said. We focus on co-regulation. We lend them our calm nervous system. This is the point. This is why when you walk around, you'll see everyone is very calm. Of course, staff are going through things themselves. Of course, we all do. But when we step into this building, we're calm, and that helps children to be calm. And it's one of the greatest compliments when children come and they say, "This isn't like anywhere I've been before." And that's not just me just saying that happens. They can't believe that we don't shout. They can't believe that we don't have sanctions, that we don't do those typical things that mainstream schools do. And I think that's what helps them. Again, as I said, as I keep saying, it's relationships with them, and it's the trust that they build with us.
And that complete difference is really important, isn't it? Because if you had the same atmosphere and feeling of the school which they've rejected, they wouldn't step on your premises, would they? They wouldn't actually come in. So that is really important. Now, we mentioned already that you don't have such a structured timetable as you might see in sort of a mainstream school. So how is it adapted so that they can still progress academically?
So each student has a personalised timetable. So it is lesson durations are around the same, which is shorter than a mainstream setting. So it might be 40 minutes. Because what's the point going on for an hour if they've got this attention span for 15 minutes? We're flexible with that. If we just need to do maths games in between, we can do that. So their timetable is personalised to them, as is their learning journey. So we plan on a weekly basis. Yes, we have as long-term objectives. Children are expected to leave with a functional skills, but there's no pressure to say, actually, you're progressing at this rate, you need to leave with a level 1. Anything can happen in between. So what we need to do is just react on that basically and adapt their learning for the following week. So if they've been off 3 days, we'll repeat it. If they didn't get it, our learning is about filling the gaps that they've missed due to previous trauma, missing out on education, and that allows us then to sort of just move at their rate basically. The timetable has sensory breaks incorporated into it. They have sessions that they are more relaxed, so as executive functioning sessions, our growth mindset, our IC, they're more relaxed and it's more of a fun way of learning. We also try and do PE as a group if the child's able, so that they do get some fun sessions, and we're actually working on their social emotional skills as well and working alongside other children.
Yeah.
And obviously we're mentioning executive function. For our listeners who might not actually know really what that is, or may only know it from a base level, what does that look like in practice, and how does it help your students develop these sort of invisible learning skills?
So what we're looking at is their working memory, their planning, their sequencing and all those skills. So initially we explicitly taught that. So we might have a lesson which would be as simple as something called cooking, following a recipe. You know, these are the executive functioning skills that haven't been able to develop properly because of their trauma, or it might just be that they have ADHD or something like that. These skills affect everyday life, basically, to getting dressed, to being able to write. And actually having the focus on those and working with the child to identify what it is they're lacking in helps them bring them up to speed, if you like, and then work with them. So now we are explicitly teaching them, it's identified on our planning sheets, staff are highlighting it. Why do you need this skill? How can it help us? And it might just be memory games that we recognise. The staff have had training on it. We are actually now using a tracking system where we are measuring the progress for this, because we recognise this is their barrier to learning, and whatever area it is they're lacking in, basically.
And are the students involved in that planning? Are they part and parcel of that, or are they more involved in seeing the progress?
They're involved with everything, basically. They are involved with their learning. Their timetable has been created by them. If they don't like a subject, unless obviously it's maths or English, we don't have to do it. We can look at other alternatives. When they reach Key Stage 4, we offer AQA units. If there is something that they are particularly good at, you walk around, you will see we have so many artists. It's fantastic. We will add these. We will do what they sort of need, basically, and want.
It's like one of our children at the minute, she is into childcare. So yes. We've got her a placement at a local nursery, thank you. Local nursery, and she's going there once a week. When I was pregnant, she did work around me and measure my bump, and she did a vote on what we should call her. I didn't go with her suggestion.
Well, 6 years or so.
Yeah.
I think. Well, yes, from the beginning she's been with us.
She's been with us.
And you wouldn't have ever thought this child will be able to go into any kind of working environment, and the progress that you see. Obviously it's slower progress because we have gap filling, but it's amazing how far she has come on.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful success story, isn't it, to have that. So credit to everybody here. And that sort of highlights, doesn't it, the sort of emphasis that you put here on enrichment and cultural capital, both on site and obviously off site. How do these experiences support the young people who may have previously struggled to access such opportunities?
So as we said, we're looking at a holistic approach. It's about the child, it's about the nurture, it's about building those firm foundations as you would your own child, as you would younger children. You have to think these children are processing at a much younger age. The backgrounds that they're from, probably the parents, it's a deprived area. Not all the parents have had the funds available or the emotional capacity to be able to give these child certain experiences that you would do. So if you're thinking about your school trips that you go on, we can add this to that, and giving them the basic knowledge that you would get in sort of Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and then it's providing them with these hooks for learning that at a later date, if they are around, they have some knowledge of something, so they can have the conversations, they can have some basis to actually build upon, and also it might interest them, So.
And you mentioned not having sort of sanctions earlier, but you've deliberately, as a setting, chosen not to use rewards and sanctions, which is quite a traditional method, isn't it, of having students know when they've sort of done things well or done things wrong. And you've obviously never used physical restraint, which again could be unusual in a setting such as this. So how do you maintain the boundaries and expectations while holding on to that relational ethos that's so important?
So really, we've never used physical restraint, and we don't use rewards or sanctions. As you say, that will surprise people. They assume chaos without these tools, but actually it's the opposite, because there's trust. Rewards and sanctions are based on regulated nervous systems being able to make rational decisions and rational choices. Our children's brains don't work like that. When you're in survival mode, when your executive functioning is compromised, a reward chart, detention, it's meaningless. It makes no difference. It would make no difference to their behaviour, it would make no difference to our relationship. Worse, sanctions are re-traumatising. They confirm what traumatised children already believe, that adults are in charge, that they are bad, and that, that they almost have to have a repercussion, and they do. Like, don't get me wrong, we do maintain boundaries, but they're through relationships and through consistency. Our boundaries are clear, and the children know what we expect.
I think that's 100%. The thing. It's the children feel safe, but not also that we're consistent. We're consistent in our response. If we've had children before, and because they've been new to us, and they might have dysregulated, and something's happened, and it's like you've walked in the next day, and they're expecting some sort of sit down chat what we're going to do, and it's just like, morning, are you okay? And it's quite what's wrong with her? Why is she okay with me? That was yesterday, this is today. I'm consistent in the response that they receive from me, so they feel safe, and then it comes to a point that they don't need to dysregulate. And if something has gone on, they want to go for a walk, we're just walking behind them. We're not pressurising to tell me what's wrong. We're just there. Obviously things have to be done, but we're in the vicinity, so they are still safe. And
the thing is as well is our staff, because of our staff. Who can stay regulated when the children aren't, because it is a skill. You know, they understand that behaviour is communication, and they trust the process. And I think that's a massive deal, because if the staff are trusting the process, then I believe the children will.
And that consistency with the staff and the staff's ability to have that skill obviously is vital for the setting to work effectively. So what training do you give them?
So staff training is really crucial. We do, loads of work in ACEs, attachment. We do trauma-informed
UK.
Yeah, trauma-informed UK.
We do have the Team Teach training. We've changed and we've done the React. Obviously that incorporates, it's not all about the restraint, it's the steps to managing that behaviour before we get to a point where it's necessary. It's what not to do. This school is made up with people and staff that have sort of worked in different backgrounds, so it's about the shared knowledge, it's about the sharing good practice, it's about learning from other people that from their experiences and how they manage behaviours, or how they manage specific children.
Yeah. And we also train in specific approaches, like, why we don't block doors. It's all right us saying we don't block doors, but why? Why don't we block doors? We have to explain to the staff, because, it's unusual. Why we rotate staff to avoid unhealthy attachment, why we read behaviour of communication. Staff need to understand why in order to follow procedures.
And with the staff, dealing with all of this on a daily basis, it's obviously it can have an emotional toll on adults. Obviously you're supporting the children and you're giving a lot to them. Yes. So how do you support their well-being and emotional resilience with such intense days?
Yeah, I mean the work is intense. You have good days, you have bad days. 100%. You're absorbing trauma daily, and you're almost sometimes been rejected by children who desperately need you. So it's very difficult some days. But we do what we can. We provide exceptional healthcare benefits. So we have a 24-hour doctor line, which is for not just the staff but for their immediate family as well. There is not just on there. There's not just the doctor. It is also, we have counselling,
things like that, yeah.
And when someone's, I can't think of the word, when you're injured, massage therapy. If someone's got a sport injury or they've hurt themselves or anything, we do everything like that. We also we're a good close knit team.
We are, and I think you can recognise, because of that, if someone's struggling. Yeah. It might be a change of face. I mean, the other week I've been walking around and you can hear sort of some challenging behaviour maybe about to occur. So actually, let's do the change of face. Let's just pop in. Oh, what we're doing today. Let's just distract them, and people are just relieved for that. And whether it's the case of just pop yourself out for a coffee while, I'll just take this for a while. But that is one of the reasons as well why we swap the staff and the students, so that it's not just on the child's part that they're building unhealthy attachment, but actually the staff are getting a break and they have a good mix of students that are quite different in their needs, basically, what they need.
And we do, we know that the secondary trauma, we normalise that. We talk about it. We are, myself, Hayley, Karen, any of the senior leaders. It's an open door policy. If someone is upset, they will ring us, and we welcome that, because it's a hard job, but we're so thankful that people want to work in it, because hopefully, as we said earlier with that girl, we are making a difference.
And obviously with the three of you leading the school, you have that support for each other as well.
Yeah. It's I mean, I'm working with my mother, so we obviously have daughter mother mode and then work mode. But what my mum's achieved is exceptional, and she's really, you can't really put into words how you feel about it, because she's created a school that, with all the staff that will hopefully go on for a long time and will hopefully continue to make a difference. And like I say, it's not just the children it's made a difference to, it's the parents. The parents we have brilliant relationships with the parents, and even the staff. That I know for a fact that a lot of the staff have difficulties in their own life, and we're there to support them as much as we can. And it is a nice, hopefully a nice place to work.
It is. Yeah.
And obviously, we've spoken a lot about sort of the curriculum and the academic side for the students, as well as sort of the sort of pastoral and emotional support. And we've talked about sort of like some success. How do you measure success when the steps are so small?
Well, I mean, realistically, you can't measure it in the same way as mainstream.
And you can't measure every student as the same.
No,
We
exactly.
measure success as whether they are even attending school.
Yeah.
That's a success story for one child. The other might actually go out with a functional skill level 2 or whatever. These are the expectations that we've not set for them, but they have just got comfortable with how they are able to regulate and manage in school, which they weren't able to do previously. So every success story at the school looks quite different.
100%. Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing. It's like some, for a child, and some parents ring us and who, when they've just started, and like, but he managed a full day. Like, how did he manage a full day in school? That is a success story. And not every day is going to be easy. Progress isn't linear. A child might have an incredible week and then suddenly it falls apart. That does happen, but that's not failure. That's trauma. And something can happen to just trigger them, and that is the truth. But yeah, it's weird because I was on my way to work this morning. I was listening to a podcast on LBC, and they were talking about how SEND schools don't have enough standardised testing, and all I can say is that how can you. They were saying about how when you get to year 6 and do SATs, we all know SATs in year 6 really is just to show what a school is doing. No child needs to do a SATs at year 6, and it's very easy when you're not seeing these children on a daily basis to go, well, they should just do tests. Get them to do tests.
Yeah, when it's individualised progress and and their individualised stories, quantifying it is not a possibility, isn't it? Which is why settings like this are so vital, because actually you're meeting the needs of those individual students who actually haven't managed to be successful in mainstream, and that's so being asked for mainstream statistical data is almost like going backwards, right?
Exactly, of course it is. And we know what's like we say, when a child stays for a full day, or when they haven't, in every other school they've run off or they've refused to come, we know that what it's taken for a child to actually get there. Like, that's what when we speak about that girl, we know what it's taken to get there. Not every day was simple and easy, and she will 100% back that up, but we're getting there and we've got there. So
yeah, absolutely. And you've mentioned the impact on families as well, which is sometimes the hidden impact, isn't it?
Yes.
And working with families and sort of multi-agency work, it's quite often a key part of the picture, isn't it? How do you work sort of with those families, the carers, the local authorities, those external professionals? How do you manage to knit that together for each of your students?
Well, especially with the families, the family again is trust. Families have been let down massively by the system, and we are not going to let that happen with us. And that's the point. It's, families, they need to know what's happening at school, and we need to know what's happening at home. And the only way that we can find that out is if they trust us and we trust them. And that's how we manage.
So basically build the relationship. A lot of the time we are the support system for their families, even if it's relating to a sibling that doesn't even come to this school. so we have the knowledge and expertise to be able to help them, direct them, or, you know, even if it is a case of filling the forms in for what they need regarding their other children or something that's going on in their life, is that we are supporting them. But also in regards to the other agencies, it's about sharing that information as well, because it doesn't always get passed on. I know there is multi-agency working and everything's supposed to be shared, but actually sometimes it does get missed out. So it's actually making sure that you were aware of this and passing all that on, so that we are working together and it is a team around child, not just everyone in isolation.
And like the local authorities, obviously we are funded by them, they need to see, you know, that what our approach is, because it's not just overnight work. We're not just going to make everything better overnight, that would be impossible. And we're transparent about everything, you know, the challenges, when we have had a challenge, when, you know, what time frames are like, you know, because some children have come and they've not been in education for say 4 years. It's going to be very difficult for us to make them come every single day. It would be hard for them. So we sometimes say, right, so we'll do a few mornings to begin with, and then we'll do a few more days, and that's sort of the point. And then as far as like, we have our relationships with CAMs, social workers, therapists, we have to share information, we have to attend meetings. We need to make sure that everyone understands our approach, so we're not working at, against each other.
Yeah, and it's passing on our knowledge of, actually, what's this work? This is working. Let's try that at home, maybe. You know, helping parents and actually raising their awareness that this child isn't being difficult. They are struggling.
And when that aligns, that's when it works.
There's no point in them coming to school, then going home to this totally different environment.
Yes.
Let's get the consistency, and actually we may see progress.
Yeah.
And that brings a real unity between home and school, doesn't it? And do you find that building the relationships with the local authorities is just as vital, so that when they're bringing students to you, it's the right student at the right place? I
mean, the thing is Karen has brilliant relationships with local authorities. As we were saying earlier, we have Barnsley, we have children from Barnsley, Rotherham, not Sheffield, but North East Links, Doncaster. But yeah, they all understand what we do. We have them in regularly just to have a look. You know, if anyone wants to come, by all means.
We don't have enough places for the ones
that want to come.
But we don't have enough
places for the ones that want to come. This is the problem. But again, it's we are different.
Yeah.
And for those schools that maybe don't have the same level sort of specialist expertise and resources, now you've mentioned sort of communication and relationships, but are there any other impactful trauma-informed practices that they could implement?
I mean, obviously not every school can offer what you can offer. I completely sympathise that, you know, teachers have got 30 kids in the class with potentially no teaching assistants. It's hard. And obviously our approach is because of our size and because we're one-to-one. But I mean, I think the thing is stop asking like, how do I make a child comply and how do I make them do what I want, and start maybe thinking, you know, what is this kid trying to tell me? What are they actually communicating here? Because again, behaviour is communication, and that shift doesn't cost anything just for you to think differently. And again, I understand that it is hard in a mainstream school, but realistically, if you build the relationship with them and the trust, then hopefully everything else will follow. But you can't teach a dysregulated child. It doesn't work. Their executive functioning skills have just gone. Even as adults, even with functioning skills, if we're stressed, if my daughter is screaming, there's no way I can just sit there and be like, right, so I'm just going to go into a conference call. You just can't do it. We as adults still struggle. So imagine that as a child who's had trauma. I would maybe just change your perspective on how it should work.
I think it's the awareness and it's the education of teaching staff, basically, that, you know, these are the struggles. Schools are now getting much more children with, you know, SEMH needs or SEN needs, and that actually being aware of this, instead of focusing on this is how we measure progress, this is sort of how we plan, this is how we track, you know, how are we teaching the child? What do we need to do? Let's look at child development. I did child development as my degree rather than the teaching part that, you know, a lot of other people do. And I find that the people they also have the child development degree, and they have a good knowledge of how to work with these children because they understand the steps of development and how we need to work with that to meet the child's needs, basically.
No, that's really good advice. That's something that anybody can do, isn't it? It's just shifting perspective.
It is, and it's also the same as, say, for example, like training the staff in trauma. There'll be a lot of children, staff who don't really know much about that, and that would change how you respond because you automatically understand it better. That doesn't need a huge budget. That doesn't need anything. It just needs you to maybe take a bit of time, and I get that's hard, but instead of doing that, maybe also look at your sanctions, like thinking if a child's misbehaving in their typical way and you're letting them, telling them to get out of the classroom, are you re-traumatising them because all they've ever known is to be alone? And that's the point.
That's really good advice, thank you. And from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest challenges at the moment in SEMH education, and what opportunities are really giving you hope for the future?
I mean, the biggest challenge, I think, is capacity. I don't think we have enough of them. Us, in general, we've asked for 4 more places in the school. We're still waiting for a decision on that, just because we think that we could help 4 more children, and 4 more children could hopefully get a lot out of us. So hopefully that'll go through. But as far as actual everywhere it is capacity. There isn't enough, and there's not enough people trained in it. The world is changing. It's all right saying, well, 60 years ago you didn't have this a lot. 60 years ago you didn't have this. Yeah. It's not the same world as it was 60 years ago. You can't compare it. It's not the same thing. Realistically, I know it's about funding, etc. But we have to think of something. Yeah. But as far as hope, I would say our kids have got hope.
There is much more awareness, I think, as well now, and even mainstream schools are becoming aware of it, and they are learning, and sometimes it might only just be these little things because they're only skirting over the top of it, that, a child needs a sensory break, they might need a cushion, these bands that they have on the chairs, and all these sorts of things. If they just go into it just that little bit deeper, it will help, and it'll help them, obviously, within their class as well, so...
Yeah, and I think as far as here, I have hope that the year 11s will leave, which will be heartbreaking because they're probably the longest we've had. But then we'll get new children who we can help, and children arrive and we can build trust with them and we can help them regulate and know their worth. And I hope that staff still continue to work in this environment. That's my other hope, which I'm sure they will. But it's hard because you absorb trauma and you have to be a certain strong individual to deal with that, and our staff do.
And if anyone is listening, they want to know more about the approaches that you use, or maybe even visit the school, what's the best way for them to do that?
So we've got a website, morethaned.org, which we can obviously send to you, or you can give us a ring. Our number's on our website as well.
This has been a truly insightful walk and conversation. Thank you, Charlie and Hayley, for sharing so much about More Than Ed, its relational ethos, and the way the school builds trust, safety, and renewed confidence in its students. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you. To our listeners, if today's conversation has sparked your interest, do subscribe, explore past episodes, and join us again for future discussions on innovative approaches to inclusive education. Until then, stay curious, stay connected.
You've been listening to Independently Speaking, the podcast of the Independent Schools Association. For more information about ISA and the schools we support, please visit isaschools.org.uk.